Okay. Hi. Today I will start with 3 stories depicting how amazing and strong our body can be. Some of them are definitely true, some of them I just might have made up, and at the end of the video I will disclaim which ones were true and which ones were just my fantasy. First story is a story of a woman who went to some deserted area with her 2 kids and they got attacked by some wild cat. Mother, protecting her 2 kids, started to defend them, and the older of the kids went for help, and it took a couple of hours until this child brought help to them. They found mom in some kind of clinch wrestling position with the cougar. She was injured, but she was still fighting and protecting the other kid that was there. The help obviously got the cat under the control, and the mom, who was till that point fighting for multiple hours with this cougar, after a couple of minutes of this release, just died out of exhaustion. However, she saved her kids because she was fighting until it was necessary. The second story is a story of a guy who was sucked in by some kind of hurricane and he was carried and tossed back to the ground. However, before that happened, he was unconscious because some object, I believe it was a kettle, hit him to the head. So when he woke up, he had just minor injuries and a couple of scratches. The third story is a story of a guy whose parachute didn't open, and he landed pretty hard, way harder than you're supposed to land when you're jumping with a parachute, because he was spinning and tossing and all kind of weird stuff. So it wasn't a free fall, but it was pretty strong fall. And they got him to a hospital and he was still alive. And they noticed that there were these weird red marks on his body. And these marks were bites from red ants where he landed, because he landed in a nest of these red ants. And as they were biting him, it really strongly kickstarted his adrenaline response, and that was what kept him alive until the help arrived and he eventually survived this incident. Now let's go to the serious stuff. Body keeps the score. Whatever we do, and many times whatever we are not doing, is in some way reflected on our body. Neck stiffness, shoulder pain, knee pain, constantly aggravated ankle. We can safely say none of this is random. It is there for a reason. And many times we can't track it back and find out what is the reason. However, in absolutely every case, there is something that can be done. My name is Paolo, and in this video, I will explain how these weird stiff places, small injuries and pains are created, how can we fix it, and most importantly, what to do to prevent it. Every activity through our whole life, from our childhood, is creating certain patterns. It is enough if you do it for 1 hour, 3 times a week for 3 to 6 months, and it is already leaving a mark on the body. By repeatedly doing same or similar type of movement, activity, we build habits. And those habits are literally built by rewiring our brain to be efficient in given activity or sport or whatever we are doing repeatedly. Because this goes way beyond sport. It can be sitting, it can be driving, it can be any kind of activity. It can be knitting, it's creating a certain habit and body remembers it. It can even be the way you sleep. I got a full episode explaining these deep processes behind building the habits and patterns in our brain, but today we'll focus on something different. By creating certain pathways, we are also creating wide sort of problems and imbalances. That is very natural because body creates a habit of what is done repeatedly, not of what is done right. So very simply said, we can get very good at doing it very wrong. Typically, when we talk about imbalance, people automatically think left versus right. One side is stronger than the other. But it goes way deeper and we can put it into 3 different layers or perspectives. Body is very complex and practical. So trying to put it into charts and graphs is pretty hard, and there will be definitely some overlap between these layers, but conceptually the first layer is our muscular chains. We need to understand that not all our muscles are built with the same purpose. Some of them are more built for stabilization, some of them are more built for fast action or execution. So the whole body can work as a one efficient functional system. This inclination towards either stabilization or execution is also determining the ratio of fast twitch and slow twitch muscle fibers. And slow twitch are more for stability and they cannot contract as strongly, but they can sustain a lot longer and they fatigue slower. For a simple example, people generally tend to have more slow twitch muscle fibers in the legs for basic activities like walking, locomotion, and daily functioning, but we have naturally more fast twitch muscle fibers in our upper body for throwing, tossing, maybe possibly fighting and similar activity. Of course, there is many other factors like actual training, our genetics that determines this, but generally we can say there are these tendencies we are born with. And these individual muscles with their specific function and place in the system are linked into muscular chains which also have their own purpose and interplay between each other. Julian from StrongFit called them internal and external torque chains. However, for simplification, I'll just refer to them as the ones that are mostly for stabilization and the ones who are mostly for execution. Second layer is purpose. A purpose of how these chains are activated for a specific movement. It is a hierarchy of contraction. Different authors are referring to different names for this, but I will stick to one that makes most sense to me. You can imagine a pyramid, and at the base of the pyramid there is primer movers. That are the muscles that are responsible primarily for executing that given movement. Second layer, the middle of the pyramid, is synergist. That means muscles that are strongly helping the primer mover to execute the movement. However, they are secondary in that chain of command. And the last one, the top of the pyramid, is stabilizers. It's all the muscles, even the tiny ones, that are around to help stabilize not only within the movement, but the rest of the body as the movement is happening. This structure is showing the optimal contribution if everything is working correctly. The problem is if this hierarchy is broken and for whatever reason, the primer mover, for example, is not working as it should, and therefore the stabilizer will take over its role. But the stabilizer or even the synergist is not built to take all that load that the primary mover is supposed to do. So if the main, most important muscle is not doing the job correctly, something else needs to step in. But that creates a problem because that's not how the system is supposed to work, and it's creating too much tension in some places because there wasn't enough tension from somewhere else. I'll give you a very simple practical example. Imagine a bicep curl, very fairly isolated movement, and obviously the primer mover is supposed to be the bicep. Yeah, you're curling with the bicep. The synergist is supposed to be brachialis, and the stabilizers are your forearm muscles, pec muscle, pectoralis, lats on the back, and muscles in the shoulder. They are basically stabilizing the whole area as the movement is happening. However, if this hierarchy is broken and somebody, for example, because they took too much weight for the exercise, are not able to curl with the bicep, they will start to swing the shoulder more, and suddenly the bicep is only stabilizing the weight and the movement is coming from different places. It's initiated somewhere else. And in this specific case, it can lead to overworking the trapezius, big muscle that can pull and create stiffness on the neck. So you see how breaking the hierarchy can lead into problems that we are not even aware of on the first sight, or when we are not considering what might be the implications of not doing stuff correctly. And that was just an example on a bicep curl. So you can imagine how much more complex and problematic it can be if we are talking about movements that are compound multiple joints like squats, deadlifts, presses, or many others. For example, jump, we cannot even consider a one movement because we have loading phase, body is working in a certain way, then we have the actual jump, where body is also moving in a very different way compared to the first part. And then we have landing, where the primary focus is on stabilizing body, not to tilt or fall over. In each part, there is specific muscles that are supposed to be primary movers. There are specific muscles that are supposed to do the synergy work, and there are specific muscles for stabilization. But in each phase of the same movement, this hierarchy shifts. And the third layer, finally, is our left and right imbalance, where the main problem usually is that one side is either not working correctly or is recovering from some injury, and therefore the balance in the body shifts and other side is asked to do more work. But it can also become as a very subtle problem over the years, just because for a natural preference for using one side more. We don't work as a symmetrical unit, so there will always be a preference for one side. And these three layers are very connected, and one problem leads to another, and it can start a cascade of events that it's even very hard to track what was the original issue. I will give you one practical example that is probably made up. I will just refer to the guy as a Joe, and average Joe is a right-handed person. He's using the right hand for most of the tasks. He's driving with right hand, he's leaning on a desk with right hand with shoulder up, and over time this leads to improper stabilization in his right shoulder. However, he's training and he's doing a lot of pull-ups and presses and bench presses, and all these movements are symmetrical, but his body is not. So his right side will get overworked and he will unconsciously start to load the left one more when training. For an experienced eye, his form is already showing it, but he's just an average Joe and he's not aware of it. He's going to a group classes where there is not much of an attention and there is always a bit of competition, or this kind of stuff can be even happening within his sport that he likes, but he's not really thinking whether he's doing it properly or not on a technique side. He just goes there to enjoy the movement. And because he's continuously overloading his left side now, it won't be able to take it for too long before there will be another compensation happening, and his neck will get stiff because his trapezius on the left side will start to get aggravated from all the load it's taking, because all that other muscles just gave up already. And over time he will not only have a pain in his neck when he's training or after, he will also feel it when he's sleeping. And the challenging part is that the pain is on the left side, so if he will go for some kind of treatment, they will most likely focus on that left side without any consideration that it might be starting, and this whole issue might be starting on a different place. So massage or needling on the left will be just a temporary relief, but he would need to learn how to stabilize his right shoulder first, and that would eventually fix it. So we have imbalances between the chains of stabilization and execution, within the chains as a hierarchy of the command, and then left and right side of the body. And with all that said, I need to mention that imbalance or slight imbalance in the body is not a problem. It is only a problem if it becomes functionally challenging, if there is some pain or discomfort. For example, for professional athletes, an imbalance is sometimes necessary for them to excel. I believe tennis players, for example, have 15 to 30% strength difference between their dominant and not dominant arm. If we would, for whatever reason, want them to be absolutely symmetrical, they would probably not be on the top, and that effort to fix it would be probably counterproductive for them. Another example can be a combative sports where many athletes, they have the front arm very fast and snappy for the front jab, and the back arm is usually a little bit slower, however, more powerful. Of course, there are also athletes who don't have this difference, but generally they are considered unique in this regard, and that itself is showing how common certain imbalance is. However, neck pain, shoulder pain, hip pain, knee pain, name it, they are not coming from nowhere. And we definitely need to pay attention if it's affecting us. And this pain and stiffness is a self-protection mechanism of the brain. Yes, brain. There is no such a thing as a short hamstring or short hip flexor. This stiffness or shortness is caused by brain. Short muscle, or what we consider a short muscle, is just a muscle that is in a protection mode because brain doesn't believe that stretching it any further beyond that point is safe for you. Muscle that is stretched and long is susceptible to get hurt more. If the nervous system recognizes that this muscle is too weak to go any further, it will stop it. I will say it again. The brain recognizes that the muscle is not strong enough and it's weak for certain range of motion. So that itself is showing us that the answer is strength training, because we need to get that area stronger, so the brain will evaluate that it's safer for us to go for further ranges of motion. It will recognize that there is no potential damage anymore. That means that the answer is not passive procedures like massage and needling and cupping. They are all nice wellness procedures you can get to feel better, but they're not fixing the root problem. So if we want to do some long-term and lasting change, we need to focus on getting it stronger to create and redistribute the tension, because that's what it is all about. Tension. We need certain amount of tension for absolutely any movement. Even just sitting, standing, walking, that's pretty simple to understand. We need certain tension through the body to move. The higher is the load and higher is the demand on the body, the more tension we need to create. And most of these movement problems, the stiffness, the niggles and all that, is coming from improper distribution of the tension. There is too much on one spot because it's lacking somewhere else. It is the distribution between our chains, within our chains, and between left and right. So redistributing tension is the answer. And how do we do it? For practical application, this video will have a part 2 where I will go into detail through all the stuff to consider, and I will cover principles what you can follow to learn how to do it for yourself. But briefly, it starts with awareness, and that is as you are training and moving or sitting or whatever you are doing, being aware where is the tension, where is the stiffness, and just generally being aware what is happening to your body. If you can't do that, if this is hard for you to even feel it, that will be also covered in the second part of this mini series, where I will explain how to attune to it better. And the second part is having the knowledge, having the theoretical base of what is important, what each movement is supposed to do, what muscles are supposed to be activated, and well, that's why we are here. You are learning all about it now. When we talk about specific sport or discipline, from running to skiing or boxing, everything is creating certain imbalance. And that is why strength and conditioning is so important. If this activity, because we want to do it, we love it, and it has benefits on its own, is pushing us one way, we need to do some kind of compensation training so we re-establish the balance in the body, and we will basically buy also more time for ourselves to keep doing the activity we want. But ignoring it and just doing more of what is already hurting us in a certain way, well, obviously that's not really long-term sustainable strategy. We need to build a structure where the body will be able to handle what we are putting on it. And as I mentioned, this goes well beyond sport. Absolutely any activity we are doing might be possibly creating certain problems that needs to be addressed. Everything we do every day is either pushing us closer or further from the result we want and we expect from our body. Closer or further to the pain, discomfort, or full functionality. Well, by this we got the theoretical baseline covered. You now know why this is all important, and in the second part I will go through this practical guide step by step explaining how to build the ultimate lifestyle that is helping us and not destroying our body. Thank you for watching. My name is Paolo. The first story from the beginning is true. This mom really died of exhaustion after protecting her child for several hours fighting the cougar, and that is showing us what our body is capable of when we are forced to and the actual survival is on the table. The guy who was thrown out of tornado is also true story, and it is very possible that he went out of that only with few scratches thanks to the fact that he was unconscious because the body was relaxed and he wasn't fighting it. That said, there is a lot more stories about people being sucked and then thrown out of the tornado, and very few of them were as lucky as he was. So that fact that he was unconscious probably saved his life. And the guy whose parachute failed and he landed in the ant nest and was bitten and survived, it's also a true story. And it is probably needless to mention that very few people whose parachute don't open or they don't open correctly have this kind of luck. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, suggestions or notes, please either reach out directly to me or use the comments here on YouTube. Thank you. See you next time.